Hi everyone, my name is Aaron and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to discuss Scientology spy and government infiltrator Brian Andrus. Check this guy out. Ugh, if that's not the face of a Scientology stooge spy, I don't know what is. Brian's name came up recently in an article that I read about a development he's doing in Clearwater. Brian's probably one of the most interesting Scientologists you've never heard of. It's kind of strange, like when you actually look into his history, he's played a pretty important role in some pretty pivotal things that have happened in Scientology's history, and yet in my 30 plus years in Scientology, I'd never heard the guy's name. Even despite some of the reporting that's been done on him. If somebody had asked me a few weeks ago if this guy Brian Andrus was a Scientologist, my knee-jerk answer would have been no. And yet I reviewed a bunch of articles that had been written, even articles I have definitely read before, and was a little embarrassed to see just how much of a Scientologist Brian has been. Not only how much of a Scientologist he's been and is, but what kind of things he's been involved in. Brian's never been a guy that I've seen Scientology hold up as, you know, something that like put him on a poster or put him in a magazine or feature him in some sort of a bit on their DirecTV channel. Again, it's possible that these things did happen, but somehow I never retained that information. There are many high-profile public Scientologists that I wouldn't have to work to remember whether Scientology put these people up on a pedestal or published their faces and their names and their stories in posters and magazines. Brian Andrus was simply never one of those people to the best of my recollection. So let me not bury the lead in this video and I'll get right to the point. Brian Andrus is, despite being somewhat under the radar and low profile for some reason, a pretty prolific property owner, developer, real estate broker in the Clearwater area. And yet Brian was also an unindicted co-conspirator in Scientology's Operation Snow White, one of the largest infiltrations of the US federal government in history. Many people may not know that back in the 70s, the FBI conducted a simultaneous raid of Scientology offices in Los Angeles, Clearwater, and Washington, D.C. It was in that raid that the FBI recovered files that described the entire scope of Operation Snow White. It was in that raid that the government recovered files that described the details and the scope of Operation Freakout, which was an operation Scientology was conducting against journalist Paulette Cooper to frame her for multiple crimes and to send her away to prison. The way the feds got all the info on all this stuff was this raid. And this raid was precipitated by a whistleblower named Michael Meisner escaping Scientology and going to the FBI. And none other than Brian Andrus was one of the Scientologists tasked with kidnapping, holding, and restraining Michael Meisner to keep him from leaving and going to the FBI. Brian Andrus was a pivotal player in some of these happenings in Scientology that was directly related to the raid of Scientology's offices. And by the way, the government's prosecution against Scientology, the prosecution built upon all of the files that was recovered in this raid, is the very prosecution that saw 11 Scientologists sentenced to federal prison for this government infiltration, including L. Ron Hubbard's wife, Mary Sue. This is who Brian Andrus is and how he has been able to fly under the radar. I feel silly even saying flying under the radar because the Tampa Bay Times has written about him. It's almost like, is he only flying under my radar? Maybe, but I doubt it. So here's a little bit of information about the development that he's working on in North Clearwater. It says, developer Brian Andrus' vision of transforming a piece of underutilized land in Clearwater into a residential property that takes full advantage of the waterfront is becoming a reality. His project, dubbed the Marina Bay 880, is a 380,000 square foot condo development project on a 5-acre lot at 880 North Osceola Ave. The project, which broke ground on October 2019, includes 2 8-story buildings with a total of 87 condos with floor-to-ceiling windows that boasts views of the bay. Residents are going to start moving in by the end of this month. This was a pretty recent article, so I do believe they're talking about August. The units, which range from 1,815 square feet to 3,809 square feet, are priced from the mid-750,000s to over 1.9 million. Several dozen units are currently available. All right, so I don't personally know Brian's history of doing other development projects. I'm sure this isn't his first one, but you can tell from the details given in this article, this is a major project supported by major money. I don't know where Brian Andrus made his money. In my entire time in Scientology, all of the wealthy business people that were always held up as examples in Scientology promo of like, look, this guy's successful, keep doing Scientology and become like him. Brian Andrus was never one of those guys. I don't know where Brian's money came from originally, or is he really just a self-made man? Did he get some giant settlement from Scientology? I don't actually know, and I'm not claiming those things. I'm just saying, I got no idea what this guy's history is. In October 2019, Tracy McManus at the Tampa Bay Times wrote a very lengthy, detailed, incredible article called Clear Takeover. It was either one big article or a series of articles, but it was called Clear Takeover. And it was about how Scientology and Scientologists had, over a couple-year period, 2 or 3 year period, doubled the footprint of how much real estate Scientology controlled in downtown Clearwater. And in this article, she examined all of the property purchases and which people and which LLCs bought what and who now controlled what. She wrote about Brian Andrus in this article, and here's what she says. Brian Andrus controls companies that last year bought a marina on North Osceola Ave and 6 nearby properties, all bordering a redevelopment project at the city's public boat ramp. He owns Stonebridge Real Estate and served as president of the Florida Gulf Coast Commercial Association of Realtors in 2017. But in the 70s, Andrus was named an unindicted co-conspirator in Scientology's government espionage scheme, which sent 11 Scientologists to federal prison. Andrus helped carry out a plan to stop a Scientologist who had spied on the federal government from turning himself into the FBI. According to court records, Andrus accompanied 2 guards as they handcuffed and gagged the man, dragged him into a car, drove him to a hideout, where he was held for a month before escaping. Andrus did not respond to an email, phone message, or a note left at his office or a certified letter. Reached at their condo, his wife declined to comment. One of the most prominent reporters at the most prominent newspaper in Tampa Bay writes about Brian Andrus having participated in a kidnapping scheme to prevent a Scientology whistleblower from going to the FBI. And somehow this guy manages to continue to fly under the radar. Like, how is anyone in the Clearwater business community going to continue to have anything to do with this guy? Here's some other information Karen De La Carriere posted on Facebook about Brian Andrus. Karen is a former Sea Org member. She was in the Sea Org for a very long time, very highly trained Scientology auditor, worked closely with L. Ron Hubbard, and knew Brian Andrus from her days back in Scientology. I'm not totally sure if this is Karen speaking in her own words or if she's pasting a compilation of information that's been reported elsewhere, but here's what she posted on Facebook. Brian Andrus was a member of the Intelligence Bureau of the Guardian Office. Before I carry on, quick definition of the Guardian's Office. This is an excerpt from Wikipedia. The Guardian's Office was established in 1966. Its initial mission was to protect the interests of the Church of Scientology and gather information on agencies and individuals deemed enemies of the organization. The Guardian's Office was also charged with internal monitoring of current Scientologists. The best way to think of the Guardian's Office within the world of Scientology is the FBI and the CIA all rolled up into one. In other words, domestic and foreign. And they essentially operated outside of the autonomous to and outside of, but senior to, the rest of the Church of Scientology. They ultimately controlled everything behind the scenes. Mary Sue Hubbard, L. Ron Hubbard's wife, was put in charge of the Guardian's Office. Her title was Guardian Worldwide. Everyone in the Guardian's Office worked for her. All right, so back to Karen's story here. So Karen starts out. Brian Andrus was a member of the Intelligence Bureau of the Guardian Office. On June 20, 1977, Michael Meisner, a Scientologist, contacted the FBI. He claimed that he had escaped from being held against his will by fellow Scientologists and had evidence of criminal activity. Meisner had been hiding out from an FBI warrant, but decided the FBI was a better bet than Scientology. In court papers later from his case, and I guess this is an excerpt here, on May 1st at approximately 6 p.m., Brian Andrus, Peter Alvitt, Information Bureau official Chuck Reese, and 2 bodyguards visited Mr. Meisner and told him that he was to be moved to another apartment. Mr. Meisner refused to leave, threatening to cause a commotion if forced to do so. The 2 guards handcuffed him behind his back, gagged him, and dragged him out of the building. Outside, they forced him onto the back floor of a waiting car. In the car, one of the guards held Mr. Meisner down with his feet. Mr. Meisner was taken to an apartment which he later learned was located at 3219 Descano Drive in Los Angeles. After Mr. Andrus and Mr. Alvitt left, 3 guards remained in the apartment with Mr. Meisner. Brian Andrus was a key figure in this kidnapping. Michael Meisner's actions resulted in the biggest raid in Scientology from the FBI and resulted in indictments of 12 Scientology staff members, including Mary Sue Hubbard. I believe it was actually 11 staff members, but who cares? I mean, this dude literally worked for the spy wing of the Church of Scientology, literally participated in kidnapping a whistleblower, is an unindicted co-conspirator in one of the largest infiltrations of the federal government in history. And he just operates here in the city of Clearwater, flying under the radar, buying tons of property, doing large development projects. I'm sure getting money from the city for some of these projects. This brings me to a point that's going to be a recurring message on this channel in my videos over the next 6 months. as I start my campaign for Clearwater City Council. The campaigns officially start next month. I'm pretty sure the paperwork can be filed on September 16th. Until then, no one's officially a candidate for anything. But I will be a candidate. I will be running for Clearwater City Council. And I'm specifically talking about the message of holding Scientologists accountable. The staff of the city of Clearwater, the elected leadership of Clearwater, the business community of Clearwater has to hold Scientologists accountable for the horrible community behavior of the organization they support with their time and their dollars. This has nothing to do with discriminating against Scientologists for their beliefs. This has to do with addressing the fact that this organization is waging a war against the city of Clearwater. And an organization is composed of its members. An organization is its membership. There are way too many people in this city who say something like, you have to separate the organization from the members. Why? Why do you have to separate them? The organization is the members. The story Tracy McManus wrote back in October 2019, Clear Takeover. That story detailed what is actually an effort by the Church of Scientology working as a proxy through its public members to block and obstruct Clearwater's efforts to redevelop its downtown district. That story detailed what I describe as basically being the next phase in Scientology's war against the city of Clearwater. The business leaders, the community leaders, and the elected leaders of Clearwater cannot pull any punches in holding Scientologists accountable for participating and enabling this war. Brian Andrus is a key player in this war. Scientology and Scientologists purchased over 100 properties through over 30 different LLCs, spending over $100 million cash, buying up tons of prime commercial real estate in Clearwater's downtown community redevelopment district. And in the 2 or 3 years since all of these properties have been purchased, absolutely nothing has been done. They've not been renovated. They've not been rented out. No plans have been submitted to the city for what's going to be done with these properties. Not only that, the people who purchased these properties, of which Brian Andrus purchased at least 4, have refused to even respond to messages from city staff inquiring about what the plans are for these commercial properties that were purchased. David Miscavige and the Church of Scientology have sort of washed their hands of the issue and said, we have nothing to do with this. Oh my word. You think this had something to do with us? No, this is just Scientologists who really believe that Clearwater's on the verge of exploding and taking off. And these guys, they purchased all this property just as speculative investments because they think everything in Clearwater is going to be worth so much more in the coming years. This is literally what Scientology has said to the local press. Anyone who buys that, anyone who thinks David Miscavige isn't secretly pulling the strings behind all of this, just has no idea what they're talking about or what they're doing when it comes to Scientology and understanding how they operate and what they're doing in Clearwater. And if you're a city official and you're not prepared to call out these public members for participating in this war against the city, for enabling this war against the city, then I don't think you're doing the job. I don't think you're capable of representing the best interests of the people of Clearwater if you're not capable of calling these people out when the opportunity arises. Scientology operates like the mafia. David Miscavige operates like a mafia boss. Even using the mafia as the perfect analogy, we can see historical examples where the mafia ends up with a lot of control and influence just through property and money, and they cozy up to city leaders. We cannot allow this sort of cozy relationship to exist between members of the mafia-like organization that is the Church of Scientology. Forget their beliefs. I'm talking about how they behave as a community partner. I'm talking about how they behave as a member of the Clearwater community. We cannot allow a cozy relationship to exist between these wealthy members who are acting as proxies in Scientology's war against the city and other influential business and community and elected leaders. When someone like Brian Andrus comes before the city council to make a presentation about his development or comes before the planning committee, Brian should be getting a grilling. You know, like, hey, thanks for showing up and coming to give us this proposal about this development that you're doing, but there's a little outstanding issue of like the 99 other properties that you and your buddies have snatched up and have refused to respond to any communications from the city about what the hell you're doing about all this. I appreciate that you're working on developing this one parcel of land. Let's have a conversation about the other 99 before we do you any favors about this one piece of land you've come to talk to us about. If David Miscavige and the Church of Scientology are going to throw its public members under the bus by saying that everything that's happening in downtown Clearwater has nothing to do with the church, but solely has to do with the public members themselves, then put the pressure on the public members. Make them answer for what they're doing. We might know Miscavige is really the one doing it, but if they're going to let Miscavige throw them under the bus, then drive that bus over them repeatedly. Make them answer up for this bullshit. Make them answer up for this kind of subversive behavior. Sure, it's legal to buy all these properties. Who cares? We're not talking about legal or illegal. We're talking about acknowledging a strategy Scientology is implementing to F over the city. Hold people accountable. It might be legal, but it's unethical. And they can be held to account publicly. They can be held to account by their peers. They can be held to account by the elected leadership, by the city staff. Pressure can be applied. The absolute least we can do to these guys who are working as proxies in this Scientology war is to embarrass the hell out of them. Scientology and Scientologists would obviously respond to an effort to hold these guys accountable. They would characterize it as some sort of bigoted, discriminatory activity. Who cares what Scientology says? Scientology calls everything bigoted and discriminatory activity. Everything. It's what they call everyone. It's the name they throw at everyone who tries to call them out for any of their crimes. Their crimes in Clearwater constitute at least human trafficking and wire fraud. I help run the Aftermath Foundation, which helps people who's escaping the Sea Organization and escaping Scientology. When the Aftermath Foundation helps people who escape Scientology, we put them in touch with the federal authorities interested in such crimes. The board of the Aftermath Foundation, through its own history in Scientology and through its involvement with people who are currently escaping the cult, we know exactly what Scientology is up to. We know how they play their game. And the fact that so many people in leadership positions in this city seem to want to fall back on easy arguments like, it's up to the federal government to do something, or, you know, so much information is already out there. Why hasn't anything been done already? Or if no one's done anything so far, what's the chance of anyone doing anything about it in the future? Or it's really up to the IRS, our hands are tied. The fact that so many people in leadership fall back on excuses like this for not doing and saying more from their positions of authority to fight back in just the arena of public opinion, at least in this war Scientology is waging against Clearwater, this has everything to do with why I will be running for city council next month. I think this city needs leaders who will set the tone from the top regarding this conversation about Scientology. For too long, the conversation has sounded like, there's nothing we can do. That is such horseshit. There is plenty that could be being done. Why would the people who are supposed to care the most about Clearwater sit back and wait for the federal government to do something about it? And if the people who are supposed to care most about Clearwater have a problem with the fact that the government doesn't seem to have done anything about it up until now, why wouldn't the people who are supposed to care most about Clearwater be making the most noise about that? How can any of these people responsible for the future of Clearwater just sit back and say, well, what can we really do anyway? There's plenty that can be done. And instead of trying to convince other people they should have the balls to do something about it, I will be running for city council so that I can hopefully, if I win, use that position of authority to do something about it both publicly and behind the scenes. I'm already doing something about it through my work with the Aftermath Foundation. I want to have city leadership who's showing the world that you can do something about it from a position of authority, and Scientology can't do anything about it. I think most people know that the city leadership, despite talking a strong game in private, is publicly somewhat afraid of Scientology. Well, I think we need leaders who are not publicly afraid, quiet, or soft on the subject of Scientology. That is why I will be running. I'm sure while I'm editing this video, I'll think of a dozen things I wish I would have said, but I am gonna leave it there for now. Those are my thoughts. For those of you who watched until the end, thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye. I want to give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Dream Realty. Oh wait, that's me. I've been a real estate investor for over 20 years. I bought my first investment property when I was 20 years old. For the last 15 years, I've been buying and selling my own properties all over Clearwater and Tampa Bay. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home and you'd like to work with me, get in touch and I'll get it done for you. Thanks again to everyone who supports this channel, and thank you for watching.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here.